Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Happy International Women's Day. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to give people a minute to join. I'm happy to see that there are close to 90 of you waiting in the waiting room. So it's going to be a busy day. We encourage you to use the chat and use the chat well to communicate with us. As ever, we will record this session and make it available for you to watch or rewatch at your leisure. Morning. Oh, early morning from Vancouver. Let us know where you're from.
Edgewater, Florida.
Florida, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Michigan.
Someone said, can you put your on mute? Can you mute everyone?
Wow, Pennsylvania, Florida, Vancouver. Wow, we are all over the country. Thank you so much. Okay, so it is 8:03 my time, 9:03 Eastern. So I'm going to start. Happy International Women's Day, everyone. I woke up really early this morning and watched an amazing panel with Billie Jean King, Gloria Steinem, the First Lady of Ukraine, Hillary Clinton, which was moderated by Mika Brzezinski at the 3050 summit happening in Abu Dhabi. And it was great to see a global group of women all talking about things like pay equity and the ability to live freely and to excel as women across the globe. So I hope that it's been a good start to your day, and I hope that this session makes you feel very empowered as you go through International Women's Day. So thank you to all of the women and the exceptional men who have joined us too, because there are some of you men that have joined in. In about 2 months, in June, it will be 2 years since we started doing these events. 2 years, and we're now up to it's at 1,055 people that have attended these sessions. So applause to all of you who have chosen to spend your time gathering, networking, and learning with us. Of course, we could not do any of this without our sponsors that help make these sessions happen and help them to also be free to everyone. And our sponsors today are Correct Craft, MarineMax, Mercury Marine, MRAA, and Volvo Penta. So thank you to those companies for their assistance. And to that extent, I do want to say that some of the sponsoring companies, some of the exceptional women from those companies have agreed to help me going forward. This started out 2 years ago as a way to combine 2 dinners, and we expected maybe 75 to 100 people. Well, that did not happen, and it's grown to the point organically where we wanted to start an advisory council. So thank you. There are 6 women on our council so far. And I want to thank them for being a part of it. There will be more on that as we move forward. So Alicia and I are going to have a conversation today about self-confidence. As ever, I continue to learn from Alicia. We request that you turn your video and mute your line. And I say that, but we want to stay engaged with you. So please use the chat. And I see Kim, the boat boss. I see, thank you, Mary Kate, for the congratulations on 2 years. So happy March 8th, International Women's Day to everyone. So please continue to chat. Alicia and I, as ever, will remain after the session on overtime to answer questions. So please also stay with us to the end as we have some key announcements coming. So I'm going to give you a little information about Alicia because we tend to have a good chunk of people who are reaching out for the first time and joining us for the first time. So our speaker today is Alicia Rodriguez. Full disclosure, Alicia has been a dear friend of mine for 30 years. She is an author and a seeker and a writer and a catalyst for growth. She writes and speaks on issues of conscious living, purposeful leadership, women's issues, and personal evolution. Her clients are both male and female. She is the author of Manage Your Life Before Your Life Manages You, More Joy and Less Stress in 365 Days. Also, Everyday Epiphanies, Insights for Living with Purpose. She's written for Tiny Buddha, Medium, Thrive Global, The Wellness Universe, and more. She is a Georgetown University certified leadership coach, president of Sophia Associates, Inc., an international leadership development practice, where she's worked for more than 20 years with visionary leaders, executive women and men, and creative and social entrepreneurs and change agents for conscious leadership practices. So I've known Alicia since the late 80s. I've watched her evolve and change, and she continues to change. She'll tell you about a big change that she's made just within the last 6 months. She is a very intellectually curious person. She has an uncanny skill of asking uncomfortable yet simple questions. As she says, she doesn't ask question number 1, she asks questions 5, 6, and 7. And they will bring you to another place in perspective. She is a citizen of the world. She has now lived on 3 different continents, North America, South America, and today in Europe. She will make you uncomfortable today, but I will tell you that you will be the better for it. So with that said, I think that was the quickest introduction I've done. Alicia, why don't you take it away?
Ow. Every time you do that, I go, did I do all that? So, which is a really interesting question that I think all of us pose to ourselves oftentimes when someone reflects back to us all the things that we've accomplished, what we've done, and in ways that we don't even know we're being appreciated. So that kind of introduces a topic today, right? So Michelle and I talked about what we might do today, and it's going to be somewhat formatted, but more like a conversation. You know, one of the things that most women struggle with, and I think it's because of the way they frame it, is confidence. And so today we're going to talk about what I call the inner game and the outer game of confidence. And that's a topic that I look at maybe somewhat differently than most people do. I believe that everything sources in energy, and whether it's words, feelings, thoughts, actions, dreams, to me, it's all sourced, like everything has energy. And in particular, confidence starts with energy. I used to do what they call executive presence or leadership presence work. And I didn't do it based on behavior. I actually did it based on energy and how we feel. And that is what I call the inner game. The inner game of confidence, and it's where we start, or should be starting, is how do I feel about a certain situation, or how I comport myself. Oftentimes, our biggest sabotage is ourselves. It's negative, what I call negative self-talk. We don't give ourselves enough credit. Somehow we're never good enough than someone else. This whole compare myself to someone else thing doesn't work, because there will always be people who are better at something than you, and there will be people who aren't as good as you. So comparing yourself really doesn't work. it's more like when I work with people, I tell people, like, think about creating your own standard of measurement. What to you looks like excellence, and not perfection, because I think this is one of the problems that women have. We strive for perfection. There's no such thing. I strive for excellence, and I think that is attainable, and it keeps us on our toes, and it keeps us evolving and learning, because there's always something to learn. And you know what Michelle said, I am intellectually curious. I'm always learning about stuff. Sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense to people, but it's always fun.
And I think that's worth repeating. You know, there's that strive for perfection and the strive for excellence. Excellence is attainable. Perfection is something that's in your head, and many times you keep changing that goalpost and it's not attainable.
Right. So I'm really curious, and I'm going to ask you to put something in the chat. How many of you at any point in your career or even life have said to yourself something like, I really shouldn't go after that because I'm really not qualified? Or has said, I can't believe I messed that up so bad. Or maybe has said, there's no way I should be stepping into that room because everybody else knows so much more than me. Anybody ever said any of that to yourselves, or anything similar to that? Please go into the chat. I'm watching the chat over there. And let me know. Yes. A lot of hands being raised many times, many times, many times, many times.
Yeah, you and I talked about it, and I think I said to you that negative self-talk, I think that women elevate it to an art form.
I think it is
so good at it.
Yeah, I call it self-flagellation. You know, just hit yourself over. Hitting yourself, because you know, and we do it so well. And I often say to my clients, would you ever say that to a friend? Would you ever say that to someone else that you cared about? So why are you saying that to yourself? And what I would recommend, just as a practice, is paying attention to your negative self-talk. I have this exercise that I'll share with you. It's really easy. It's 2 columns. Negative self-talk over here, all the things, what I call limiting beliefs you have about yourself, where you feel that you fall short. And then the other one is a counter to that. So I might say, I'm not as good as everybody in this room. And the counter to that in the second column would be, I'm here because I belong and I'm always learning. So I really encourage you, if you really care about exploring what kind of internal dialogue you're having, and remember, I said, it does have energy, because the energy I carry with myself when I say, oh, I really shouldn't go in that room, everybody's smarter, is like small energy, you know, it's like contraction, right? But if I say to myself, hey, there's a lot of brilliant people in here, I belong here, and I'm always learning from them, then your energy is up, right? And so what people, and we're going to talk about how the inner and the outer is linked, because the inner is this thing that I'm saying to myself, and then the outer is, you know, am I putting myself down? Well, I'm going to walk like this. I'm going to be small, like literally, physically. You're going to make yourself small, whether you're aware of it or not. But if I'm saying something else, you know, your shoulders are back, you're standing up, and you enter with presence. And I'm sure you've all had the experience of being in a room and someone enters, male or female, enters. They don't say a word, but everybody turns around and looks at them. It's like, it's actually called magnetic resonance. There's a resonance with your energy in your body that comes across. Some people call it charisma. Some people call it presence. We all know it when we see it, but what we see is maybe the body language, but what we don't see is the source of it, which is the energy, the stuff inside. And I kind of like sometimes feel it in my solar plexus. I do exercises somatically with some of my clients, and like right where your belly button is like in Chinese medicine, it's called Tantien. It's where your power is held. And so I actually teach people to tap into that even when they're, or especially if they're not feeling particularly confident in something, because, you know, there are times where we don't feel particularly confident in things. And so I will tell my story, Michelle. I have stories. I know. I told Michelle this story. So true story. When it was about like the second year, I was in, I had my Sophia Associates practice, and I had been hired by the board of directors at this financial investment firm in Baltimore to coach the CEO. And when the board hires you, you know that something's wrong. Because you walk in going, oh, this is not going to be good. And so I'm going to, just for a name, I'm going to call him Jack. And I walk into Jack's office, and it's a typical, like you see in the movies, big office, lots of male energy in it, dark wood. His desk is like this high. And I walk in, you know, his secretary brings me in, and I just stand there. He doesn't even look up. Doesn't even look up. I'm just standing there. And then finally he looks up, and he doesn't say sit down. He motions like with his hand to this chair that's in front of his desk. And when I sat in the chair, it was like way down here. So I'm like this small. He's like up here over this big giant desk. And remember, I'm only doing this for like about 2 years at this point, not 22. And he's much older than me. That's the other thing. And he finally looks up at me and he says to me, so what does a little girl like you have to teach me? And I was like, uh-oh. And it was this kind of, I could have gone either way, right? And I had already walked in really centered. I had done my breathing. I wasn't expecting that, but when in doubt, always pause and breathe before you open your mouth. Absolute rule, right? Paused, breathed. I sat back and I said, you know, I really don't know, but you're paying me $500 an hour, and I'll sit here as long as you like. And you could see in his face, there was just a little glint in his eye, just a little glint. And then we started talking. And about a month later, he said to me, I owe you an apology. And I said, why? And he said, well, when you first came in, what I did, you know, I was trying to intimidate you. And I said, yeah. I said, you kind of were. And he says, do you want to know why? And I said, sure. And he said, everyone around me says yes to me. I needed to know that you could say no. And I was like, wow. And that's what happens at the C-level. People want to please them, and they don't get the truth because people are afraid of them. And he was a very intimidating man. So I say that because when we talk about the inner and outer game of confidence, the inner game for me in that moment, you know, I'm having a conversation in my head. I've only been doing this two years. Maybe I don't have anything to teach him. Maybe I'm not supposed to be here. Maybe they need someone older. And I can hear it in my head. And then I hear the counter. You were hired by the board for a reason. You were hired because they believe in you. You were hired because you can do this. And then I thought, you know, what does this man need from me for me to be credible? And I had to engage him. I couldn't go back. I had to engage him at the same level. So I shared this story with you because every single one of us has walked into a room and felt intimidated. I don't know anyone who hasn't. And women in particular, sometimes it's because of our size. Sometimes it's because we're soft-spoken. Sometimes it's because we're introverted. And sometimes it's just because we're female. And the biggest sabotage is what's going on in here. What are you saying to yourself? Because that's going to drive everything else. And the practice is before you need it. So doing the 2 columns that I said to you is really worth doing, because you have to be able to say to yourself, okay, I just heard myself say this, and I know my counter to that is this other thing. So it's available to you right when you need it. It's like when someone's trained, well, Michelle is a perfect example. She's training to climb Mount Everest. and every single day she trains because she knows at some moment in time, she's going to need that. And it has to be quick and it has to be available. So all the training that you do happens because at some point your body's going to have to kick in like automatically, like intuitively, because you won't have a lot of time. And the breath is important. Deep breath out. Okay, how do I want to respond to this?
I think that's so important, Alicia, because I think the instinct is to automatically say something.
And say too much.
Yeah, and it's a lot. And the other comment that I would have is the more I got to know over my career, the people that are in that CEO suite, they're people. And what I find interesting is how surprised they are when you engage them as a person. How are you? Are you enjoying what you're doing? What's the biggest challenge in your job? What do you love about it? Asking them questions about them and their job doesn't happen that much. They're used to, saying results on Wall Street to Wall Street investors and to having to stand in front of big groups and justify what their companies are doing. Don't forget that they're a human being too. Yeah. They put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you do.
Yeah. And there's
or skirts.
Or skirts, right. There's also this sense of authenticity, right? And so that's part of the inner game. A lot of times, and I think maybe for women, who started, their careers, 20, 25 years ago, trying to conform to a male standard. And, do you remember maybe some of you don't, like those padded shoulder things?
Welcome to the
80s. Yeah, and all that
Dynasty.
Oh yeah, Dynasty, that was it. And just the idea that, they were entering into a male world, and the idea was, well, I have to conform, I have to be like men, is really wrong. It's soul sucking, for one thing. You will give up too much of yourself. But the other part is exactly going back to what Michelle said, we build connection through our authenticity. So if you're not being authentic, you're not really building a true connection. You're building a false connection with whoever it is you're trying to build a connection with. But to be authentic is so important. And it says, I'm standing up for who I am and what I care about. And you don't have to agree with me. It's okay. You don't have to agree with me, but I'm not willing to give up any piece of myself. And if it means that you're one of these people who likes to come in and smile and say, hey, how's it going today? Then do that. I'm not saying wear your heart on your sleeve. I'm not saying overshare. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying connect authentically from who you are, because every single one of us is special in our own right. And I think that's something that has to be recognized when we talk about confidence. Is Michelle and I are different in many ways and similar in other ways. It's okay. We don't always agree. It's okay. Right? Michelle, do you want to add to that, the authenticity part? Because you've really talked a lot about that with the marine industry.
Yeah, I think I'll go back to that. It's all in how you react to something. Alicia, in the last session that we did, talked about being hit with a stick, and whether you move or don't move, that you're still going to be hit with the stick. What you control is how you react. And I will share a story with you. I don't share this story very often, but Joan Maxwell really pushed me to share this with you. And a long time ago, I was young. I went to see a distributor down in the South, and that distributor said to me, "You're a woman, you're a Jew, and you're a Yankee. And why should I do business with you?" And at that moment, I could have, wanted to sink into the floor in certain ways, but you stand your ground, you hold yourself up. And a couple of years later, I was at a show, and I had given that distributor who said that to me, we had worked things out, and I had given him an exclusive territory. I was at a show where his competitor was part of a group and was trying to sell my products. And I wouldn't let that happen. I turned the customers away. I said, if you want to buy in that territory, you have to buy from X. And the man leading the show came up to me and lost it. Yelled, screamed, berated, everything awful that you can imagine. And I stood there in silence, which I think completely angered him even more. And I think part of it was shock, and part of it was I just didn't expect such poor behavior. But I stood there and I took it. And in the end, I still wouldn't sell. And what happened was the man who had said those awful things to me heard that I stood my ground that way. And it completely changed the dynamic of our relationship. So I would say to you, stay authentic to who you are and to your integrity and your morals, because in the end, it will come back to you in ways that you cannot expect. I actually wound up being really good friends with the man who originally made that statement to me. And it was because he finally learned who I authentically was.
Right. That's a great story. And it brings me to my third point, which is this thing called imposter syndrome. There's no such thing. So let me just explain that. Okay. You see this everywhere. First of all, it's almost always applied to women, not men. It's almost always applied. The word syndrome is diagnostic. It's a medical term. It harkens back to the time where they used to say women had hysteria. And so language carries energy as well. So when we look at something that says imposter syndrome, typically when you read something like that, it refers to not feeling enough in some way, like not skilled enough or not enough. But here's the thing with that. What we don't look at is we don't look at the system that created that. We don't look at systems that don't reward women in the same way that they reward men. So if you're not being rewarded, how you value yourself may very well be a little less than, right? And so we have, so many things that women are not valued, women of color in particular are not valued, differences in culture, in race, it's just so many differences. And the predominant culture, which is white male, is the standard of measurement. And so I'm not a white male. I will never be a white male. And so I will always be, in the eyes of those kinds of measurements, less than. And that's where imposter syndrome came. So I am an imposter if you're telling me I'm not a white male. No, I'm not, right? So I wanted to bring this to your attention. There was a great HBR article recently on imposter syndrome that really explained it really well. But I want you to always think of it, if you ever feel like that it's systemic. The system isn't giving you the positive feedback that you deserve. And that's why it feels like you're not enough or you're not qualified enough. One of the things I always see is, I have clients who want to go after a job, a C-level job, and they say, oh, but I don't meet all the requirements. Well, they meet 80% of the requirements and they still don't think that they meet all the requirements. But typically a man only needs to look at it and say, hey, I got about 20, 30% of that. I think I'll go for it, right? But women, we stop ourselves before we even give ourselves a chance because we have this idea that the not enough idea. I don't have enough skills. I haven't had enough experience. And I would say to you, go for it. If you want it, go for it. Don't stop yourself before you've even started. And that's also the inner game. That's part of the inner game, is to really look at yourself and say, I have all these skills that I can contribute, and I can always adjust the job. Like you can. It's called a negotiation, right? So I really encourage anyone who's thinking of doing a stretch assignment or going for something that you might feel unprepared for, chances are you are prepared enough for it. And then you grow into the rest of it. Nobody grows into a C-level position knowing everything. Nobody. So don't go into it thinking I'm supposed to know everything. You're not. You're supposed to have good skills in certain areas and good experience, but it's not 100%. So.
Well, this morning, Billie Jean King told the same exact story.
Oh, really?
She just heard it. Yeah. And the person had 90% of the skill set. So the other thing I would say about that is it's also about building your team. You told a story in one of our last sessions about not being able to see beyond the horizon, and that there are others in different viewpoints that might be able to see further down that horizon. So you have a certain skill set. You also are able to build a team or utilize people that may be able to fill in where you feel weakness or help you learn. So I would say, go for it, and then look at how you can build out the team to give you that broadened perspective and those skills that you think you need in order to be successful.
Right.
That's another approach.
Right. And so,
and I think you need to talk about failure too, because, we learn in sports. I mean, I'm grateful as can be that I grew up, I had an unusual childhood. I was really devoted to sport. I spent most of my life in an ice rink when I was a kid. But the lessons that it teaches you, there's an opportunity in failure in that you do learn and you do move on and you do say, I will never do that again, and I will do Y instead. And I think that is something that also builds confidence. So if something goes horribly wrong, there's never a negative totally in it, because you will learn from what had happened.
Right. And it's like, nothing's ever final. There's always another opportunity. There will always be, but a lot of it depends on how you respond to that and what you take of it. It's like, what did someone say? It's not happening to me, it's happening for me. And that the for me means I'm learning from it, because no one is,
you always have to take a risk. I mean, what does Brene Brown say? You can have courage or you can have comfort, but you can't have both.
Right.
I think if you're really going to push life, then you have to have courage.
Right.
But Alicia, I don't know if you want to speak to, if you are that person that's new, or that is in that room that feels intimidating. What are the techniques that you would suggest for someone that, they can create that presence and be in that room authentically themselves? What would you tell them before they walked in that room?
It's the practice that happens before you, like the consistent practice. So like I have all my clients keep an awesome log. That's what I call it, an awesome log. And it's either every morning or every evening, depends on what they enjoy. But most of my clients at the end of the day write down how they were awesome that day. And it could be as little as, I was nervous about making a phone call to so-and-so and I did it and I stood my ground. Or I just realized that I booked, I overbooked, my goals or something for sales. So it could be either a qualifiable or a quantifiable awesome thing. And when they don't feel like they're awesome, they're to open their awesome log and read it and remember how they're awesome. So it's that practice that happens before. And then I will share a little secret thing that I do. So I had another story. I had a C-level client who needed to make a presentation to the board. And she was very petite, like stature, and she was soft-spoken. She was brilliant, and she was really powerful. And she had actually been overusing her power in a negative way, an aggressive way, to compensate, because she didn't know how to do it. This one time she was going in and she wanted to change the strategy of the company. And she was meeting with the board, and she knew that she was going to get resistance. And so one of the things I had her do is when she was into the conversation with the board on selling it, because she was small, I asked her to stand up. I said, just stand up, casually stand up like you're going to go get a glass of water. Stand up and keep talking and walk around the conference table. So what do you think happens as she's walking around the conference table? Up until now, she's being talked over. What's happening when she's walking across, right? Everybody's looking at her. They're following her with their eyes. It means they're quiet. They have attention on her. They're finally listening to her. And she's walking slowly, very casually, giving them her spiel. And she said everybody with no one talked over her. And she was able to sell the strategy because she got their attention. It's a strategy that I tell women to use all the time. It's like, just stand up, be visible, stake your place, not in an aggressive way. That doesn't work, but in a really like kind of grounded way. Someone just wrote brilliant. It really is. It works every single time, I got to tell you. So these are kinds of practices that are like the practices that you have beforehand. And the practice I said about the 2 columns is also another practice. And then the practice of when you're in it, which is stand up and walk around, pause, breathe, center, respond. Pause, quiet, breathe. It oxygenates it so that you're not going into your limbic system, you're not going into fight or flight. Center, and center is a question. A question is, what do I want out of this interaction? Be clear about it. And then respond or engage, step in, don't step out. And oftentimes when you step in with a question. Can you say more about that? Could you please clarify what you mean? Are you open to another perspective? So that's the question, and it opens up a new possibility that didn't exist. And I wanted, before I go into the outer part of it, I wanted to share Simone de Beauvoir, who wrote The Second Sex. I just think that's every woman should read that book. But she has a quote, and when I saw it, it reminded me, it was the perfect quote to address imposter syndrome. She says, her wings are cut, and then she is blamed for not knowing how to fly. Her wings are cut, and then she is blamed for not knowing how to fly. And that's where, you know, a lot of women have been. We haven't been given the opportunities, the visibility, the support, and then we're criticized for not being enough, right? So I wanted to share that quote with you. Yes, The Second Sex. Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
So I want to go to like the outer. I'm terrible at timing. How much more time do we have?
We're in good shape. The only other thing I wanted to add to the inner game is give yourself a pep talk. You know, I was on the Camino last spring, and I was with a woman who was over a decade older than me, and every morning in the mirror she looked at herself and she said, I can do this. I know I can do this. It might be tough, but I know I can do this. And I remember doing it. I was going to meet someone who was very important. I was very intimidated, and I looked in the mirror and I said, you need to crush this. You need to be unforgettable to that man and walk out where he's just going to say, okay, wow. And it was intentional. And I think if you're intentional with how you're going to present yourself, how you're going to walk into that meeting, and knowing what you need to get out of it is really, really important. And those pep talks in the mirror, they work for me. They worked for Deb. She made it all the way to Santiago.
And it's true. It's like, was it Amy Cuddy, the Superwoman pose or something like that? In a way that's all intention. And so actually the outer game starts with intention. That's exactly where it starts. It's like, what do I intend? And from there, how will I show up physically, through my communication, through my language, through my ability to be present, all of that. And that starts with intention. So we talk a lot about with the outer game of confidence has a lot to do with the way we communicate. And so being concise, getting to the point, rather than having to explain. We talked in past sessions about not using tentative language. Oh, I don't know if you're interested, but, or could we just do this? Just, that's another one. You know, I don't remember what session it was we talked about, but tentative language really, really, really sabotages our ability to be credible and get our points across. So that's part of the outer game. Your physical presence is also part of it. If you are, I mean, everybody has off days. We don't feel particularly powerful or particularly good or whatever. And those are the more difficult days. But if you are going into a situation where you need to present, or you need to be like on your what I call on your A game, you know, then you would have, if you've been practicing the practices I mentioned before, then your physical presence is, you know, stand up. It's like what your mother told you, stand up straight, you know, stand up straight, wear your power suit, whatever it is. Sometimes it could be a t-shirt and jeans, doesn't matter, you know, or it could be a dress that looks particularly good on you or whatever, but feel good with yourself and your physical presence. Again, all of that comes as an energy that comes across to the other people that says, I'm here, I'm present, I'm available for the conversation, I'm connecting with you, I'm going to learn something and I'm going to share something with you. So that, and all of that derives from the intention that you've created before you walked into the room.
And Alicia, right? There's some chat going on about the use of music to help motivate and get you into that headspace. Nancy asked an interesting question here, and I'm going to try to go back up to it. We've been focusing on how women interface with men, but she asked about how has anyone found women who treat other women as some of the stories we've heard, that she has been exposed to that, which is something that we haven't really discussed as well.
Are you saying women that put other women down? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, or make them uncomfortable.
And make them uncomfortable. I had a mentor who made me really uncomfortable, but she did it because she was, it was her way of teaching me, right? And I trusted her. You know, I have heard, you know, women against women, or, you know, and part of that dynamic is that when women feel, when women, how do I say it?
It's part of an insecurity, I think, is what you're trying to say.
I was going to say scarcity. It's a scarcity mentality that there isn't enough for everyone, right? I don't adhere to that. I'm totally about abundance. Yes, there is enough for everyone. And I find that I create relationships around me that are collaborative in nature, and that we all source from abundance, that there is enough for us. I don't have to take from you to feel better about me. And so to the extent that you can, surround yourself with other women who are like that, who are from a port of generosity, of abundance, of support, because we really need each other. We really, really need each other. And I think, you know, I would say that on a human level, humans need other humans to be collaborative and supportive, because it's that illusion that we are separate from one another that causes so much divisiveness and hatred and war. When we understand that we are really all interconnected, why would I do something to hurt you? Because it's hurting me too. but you have to find the tribe of people around you that think that way. And sometimes, you know, if it's your boss, you may not, and you'll have to figure that out and stand your ground and be authentic and do all those things regardless.
Yeah, and I think the practices that we've been talking about today, regardless of if you're interacting with a man or a woman, all pertain to it. So, you know, the other thing I would say is people ask me if I feel competitive with other women's events and groups within our industry. No, not at all. Bring it on. I think it's great. You know, the more that we do, I know Wanda's done some things. I know Boating Industry's done some things. We've connected with the RAI and British Marine who's doing things, and people send me things all the time. Ben Taylor sent me one this morning, an interview that he did with a young woman. So, you know, the more that we can reward each other. If the reward system was set up by a system that was older and more male, then we have ourselves to reward each other. And there are some really exceptional women in this industry. And I think that creating ways that we can rise each other up is what we need to do.
You know, another thing I wanted to address is stop asking for permission. Cut it out. Stop it. I am of the ilk, it's better to ask forgiveness than permission.
I am too. My boss doesn't really love it, but
just be prepared for some backlash. You know, but yeah, too often we feel like we have to ask permission, and even when we don't have to ask permission. So stop feeling that you have to ask permission for anything. You know, if it's you know, to be included, you know, you don't ask permission, you show up. You go, no, I this is part of what I do. I'm supposed to be at this table. Don't ask permission. Go do it.
There are some limitations. There are budgets.
Right. Obviously, yeah. But I mean, I think we just overdo the permission thing, you know, especially when we think we're supposed to be asking for permission, and there's no requirement to ask for permission because you belong.
Well, and I always go back to the thing that if you really, really, really want something, you have a tendency to make it happen. So that doesn't pertain only to your personal life. It can pertain to your professional life as well.
Right. And, you know, and along the lines of permission, the other thing about the outer game is you mentioned it earlier, Michelle, is risk. I think women tend to be risk averse, and I'm not saying, you know, be a daredevil or anything like that, but I think we overdo the risk averseness. And so I would say the way you get things done and the way you step into, you know, next level learning or next level in your career is to risk. And I would say, you know, assess that risk. And if you're not sure, then ask some of the colleagues that you have that see the greatness in you. And nothing is ever achieved if you don't risk. What was that quote you said about being comfortable? But the Brene said,
you can have courage or you can have comfort, but you can't have both.
Yeah, it's that. And nobody really achieves things or learns unless we want to risk. But know what you're risking for. Make it worth the risk. Don't just go crazy, but like I always say to this, for the sake of what will you do that? For the sake of what do you want that job or that career or whatever it is? So understand risk through the lens of, for the sake of what am I willing to risk this? So that's a great question to keep handy for yourselves. Right. And then I had another little story I wanted to tell you about one of my clients. So the African American woman, very soft-spoken. And when she was hiring me, she said, I want you to make me more forceful. And I said, really? I said, why? And she said, because when I'm in meetings, everybody talks over me. And I start saying things and people interrupt. And then I find that my idea is being spoken by another man in the room. And all of a sudden it's a great idea. So I want to be more forceful. I want to go in and I want to own the room and dominate the conversation. And there's this very introverted person using this language with me. And I'm like, okay, that's not going to work. And so I said to her, I said, okay, I want you to do something for me. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to imagine yourself in that room. Like, do you have that? And she goes, yeah. I said, okay, now I want you to imagine yourself being forceful, owning the room, dominating the conversation. And I'm looking at her and her eyes get this big. And I said, what? She goes, I can't do that. I said, of course you can't. I said, why would you want to? I said, it doesn't work. I said, it's not who you are authentically. I said, if you ask me to teach you how to get your ideas across, or how to be seen as more engaged, because she's one of the things is she's an introvert, so she processes slowly. She wants to be really thoughtful about what she says next. So I said, I can teach you to do that. And so you get to the point where, like, anytime you say something, people want to listen because everything you say is so valuable. I said, I can teach you that. I said, but I'm not going to teach you how to be forceful. That's not going to work. And so that goes back to the standard of measurement. If the standard of measurement is extroverted, loud, forceful, dominate, and it's in our language, you know, we call them war rooms. I mean, that aggression is in our language, and that carries energy. And I ask you, do you really want that energy associated with you? I think not. I think there's a way to be strong and powerful and authentic and grounded and centered and speak from that place. And it begins with the conversation you're having with yourself first. And then from there, what's the energy that comes out? And then what's the behavior out in the world that they see? So that is like the summary of like the inner and outer game of confidence. And Michelle will have on the page a downloadable little ebook that I put together a while back on 10 affirmations for confidence, that there, you know, 5 of them are inner game, 5 of them are outer game. Things like, you know, one woman, her affirmation was, I am worthy and I deserve to be in this room. That was one of her affirmations. So I do believe in affirmations because it counters the self-talk. It gives you a positive self-talk. That's what affirmations do. So steal them if you want, use them, create your own, whatever. But, you know, Michelle will have that available for you.
They're already up. It's on the tradeonlytoday.com/we WII page. So that's already there. The other thing I would say is, you know, women are 2% of the marine industry in terms of women working in the industry, a mighty 2%, as I say. But that is also a superpower. When I was selling in this industry, especially highly technical products, there aren't that many women that are out there doing that. You're part of a small but forceful and intellectually wonderful group. So utilize that to your
But they never sent it.
What-
I don't
Okay.
know if you told
It's
them
Maria.
mute.
Kim,
Maria.
can you
To send it to
please-
Rob.
Yeah,
Can you-
send Maria too.
So
Kim
copy
Square?
it to Maria.
Hello.
Oh, there we go. So I would say you're going to get noticed because you're going to be one of the few in the room. So utilize it. The other thing is, Rachel, you had said something about understanding, feeling out your boss and asking permission because you're not really sure. I'm going to go back to the question here if I can find it. I deferred in asking for permission to speak up and do my job. There are ways that when you walk in just to see a boss that you can turn that around. And Alicia, if you want to talk to that, but to me, it's go in and say, here's what I intend to do, the reasons why I intend to do it. What's your feedback? And in that way, you're taking that power back. it's not asking permission, but it is keeping the boss informed. So they do have that opportunity to give you that feedback, and it helps you feel them out.
It also says that you come with ideas. It also says you could come with solutions, and that you're not asking permission, you're asking for feedback. It's a big distinction. It puts you on equal footing. Right? So when I say ask permission is, would it be okay if I? That's asking permission. But what Michelle is saying isn't asking permission. It's coming with a solution and saying, here's what I'm thinking of doing. Here's the result I'm aiming for. Am I missing anything? Or, what are some other options that maybe I haven't considered? So that's a learning opportunity. And your boss feels like they're engaged with you and they're, they can support you in that way. Very different than asking for permission.
Yeah. And it's a way for them to feel that you value their opinion and that they're being heard.
And it gives you greater visibility to your boss, because you want to be visible to your boss or to the powers that be, because you just want them to know that you are a capable person that has ideas and is a solution finder. I don't call it problem solving anymore. I like solution finder better. Any other questions? I have a quote that can I have one more?
Yeah. We're going to have to wrap up, and we have some announcements, and then I know that there have to be a lot of questions because the chat's been really, really blowing up. So let's make sure that we leave time for that.
So my last quote is also a Simone de Beauvoir quote, and it's on the day when it will be possible for women to love, not in her weakness, but in strength, not to escape herself, but to find herself, not to abase herself, but to assert herself. On that day, love will become for her, as for man, a source of life and not of mortal danger. It's one of my favorites. So
well, thank you for that. And thank you to Alicia. Thank you to all of you for attending and for your report. As ever, we will record this session and it will be available at tradeonlytoday.com/we. We've had topics of your 4 pillars, building your personal brand, negotiating for empowerment, gearing up for success and joy. There are a number of resources on that page that Alicia has shared with us. Speaking of recordings, I finally have the recordings. Thank you, Julie, of the conversation that we had at Miami with Joan Maxwell and Chris Carroll. I will be putting that up. So by Friday, you should be able to see the recording of this. You should be able to see the recording of our conversation with Joan and Chris that happened on February 17th. And I have the recording from the outstanding panel that we had at Met's Trade in Amsterdam in November, which was a global panel that will also be up on the tradeonlytoday.com/WII site. So if you have a day where you're feeling low and you want to get empowered and you want to listen to women that are really dynamic, there's that for you. We will send a survey after this event. We always do, and we appreciate the feedback. It does give us topics and things that you want us to do in the future. Our next event will be the 1+1 mentoring kickoff. It will happen on June 14th. I am looking for some of the people that were leaders and participants to be part of that kickoff and be part of a panel. So if you are interested in doing that, I would very much appreciate it. And you can email me at mgoldsmith@aimmedia.com. Also, please save the date, October 2nd. Alicia is flying to the US one more time.
I'm going to try again.
To lead us in our day before IBEX in-person women's workshop summit. There will also be a leadership panel. We will hand out our most innovative marine company awards. CETO is going to hand out their awards. And then at the end of the day, we're going to have a beautiful innovation celebration cocktail party out by the water. That will take place October 2nd. Doors will open at noon. So if you're starting to book your flights for IBEX, think about coming in a day early and being there for noon. And once again, thank you to our sponsors, Correct Craft, Marine Max, Mercury Marine, MRAA, and Volvo Pento. We could not do it without you. Huge thanks to Alicia. And I want to open it up for questions. You can either put the question in the chat, or you can unmute
raise-
yourself and put your video on and ask the question as you see fit.
I think Zoom allows you to raise your hand at the bottom where there's a little button that says reactions, and then that way we can see that you've raised your hand and then put on your video.
Yeah. And stay in contact. We will send out information if you'll be part of our mailing list on when the 1+1 program registrations start. We're broadening that program in terms of the number of years that you're in the industry, the number of appointments that you can have. So bigger and better in year 2 for you to have that chance to meet with an industry leader.
Oh, and congratulations to Michelle on her promotion.
Thank you.
Hello. We missed that.
Thank you.
Somebody on the chat remembered. So yes, congratulations to Michelle.
Thank you.
So open for questions.
Question. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. And we finished right on time. If nobody's got questions, we'll stay on for a few more minutes. If you're waiting for the group to get smaller to ask your question,
Or you can do it in the chat if you don't want to.
or you can do it in the chat. We'll put our email addresses in the chat. Are you using the Alicia at M. Rodriguez?
For the retreat.
Oh, hey, we didn't mention that Alicia is running the retreats. I'll send the information out in an e-blast to the women. But if you want to talk about it as they're signing off, we can do that too. I'm sorry, why didn't we do that?
Because we're so into like what we're doing. We're so into giving more content and very valuable stuff. So yes, I run retreats in Portugal. I run one-on-one. In other words, one person spends a week with me and you are my only guest, and we work on a deep dive exploration of whatever the burning question you have is. And then I run restorative circles where a small group of women who are friends or colleagues, that I get a phone call that says, hey, I'm coming with 3 of my friends and we want to work on this. And I design a week for your group that includes personal or professional development. But they're intact. So you bring the people and I design the week, and it's great fun. I've had a great response with that. And I'm also doing a very, we're just starting to talk about in October, and I know it's a bad time for you guys, but a retreat here that will basically help people understand how they can brand their company. Usually we have a lot of entrepreneurs who come. It's me who's going to be working on mindset. My colleague, Lauren with Box Creative is going to be talking about branding, and my other colleague, Jill Mokes, is going to be talking about marketing and how these 3 things can work in tandem to elevate your business and have you feel good about it. And it's in Portugal.
It's in Portugal.
In Algarve, so
which is
here.
beautiful.
This is like right here. I'll be walking there. So questions, anybody?
I'm writing the link for where you can find all of the information in the chat that was asked.
All right. Ask anything, really. I just found out that there's a thing, AMA, ask me anything. I didn't know that. My son told me about it. He says, you're doing an MA. Where are you? Carolina.
Yes. And Michelle, thank you so much. I don't know if you can see me.
I can see you. Hi.
Thank you so much for everything that you do and bring us together to have this type of conversations. This is extremely valuable for a lot of us. I don't really have any questions, but more like a request, and I don't know if we can do it.
Okay.
Since today is the hashtag Embrace Equality Day for us, if some of us here in the chat can turn our cameras and have like a little picture with embracing ourselves, if that's okay with
I
you
love
guys.
that.
Yeah, does everyone want to turn their cameras on and do that? We should have done it earlier.
I know.
Here we go. Everybody turn their
Excellent.
cameras on. We'll all do it.
Yay, that's amazing. I will take the selfie picture and I will share it with you on the chat so you all can have it. I just need
That's
to see
fantastic.
how can I put this like everybody. So I guess it's gallery. And then we have,
Everyone want to turn your cameras on? We'll all do this. Hi, Renee. Hi, Christy. Hi, everybody. Hi, Natalie. Hi, Steph. Erin and Valerie. Hi, and Paris. Hi, Paris.
oh, amazing. This is great.
Okay, are we ready?
So
One.
I have on the first page, because we have 3 of them. We're a lot of women here in this meeting. We have 3 pages. The second one, nobody has turned the camera on, so we only have 1.
Yeah.
So of course I have to like do a
Hi,
bunch of
sorry to
things,
interrupt you, but
just embrace yourself.
in the chat, people are
Yeah.
saying that they cannot turn their cameras on because it's disabled by the host.
Okay.
That's
Ryan, can you change that?
Ryan, help us.
Working on it right now.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay. So let me check.
Give
Okay,
Ryan
so
2
I
minutes
have-
here. Ryan, tell us when it's done. We'll let everybody turn the cameras on.
Yes.
Oh, and congratulations on the WSIA panel. That was fantastic. Congratulations to Ashley, who ran that too, and Natalie, who was on it. Good job.
Stephanie and Cindy, do you mind speaking for a second so you can appear on the first page?
Me?
Stephanie,
Me?
yes.
Hello. Hi, this is Cindy.
Okay, let me see.
Hi,
Hello,
Cindy.
hello.
Great. Okay, I see you. Now I see Ryan and Erin. You guys don't have it on, so it's our pictures are gonna
Ryan.
look strange.
Ryan's busy.
Let me see.
I still don't have permission.
Oh, that's why. Okay.
Okay, go ahead, take the picture. It's all good.
Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm gonna take the first picture because we can take another one.
Okay.
Okay, I'm
how-
gonna take the first picture. So embrace yourselves.
Oh,
There you go,
And give
Erin.
me
Now we
1
see you.
second.
Now we see you, Erin.
Ready? All smile. Embrace yourselves. Great. We're gonna do it one more time. We're gonna do it